Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 16th of December 2021, and these are the stories that we'll be talking about during the course of the show. We'll begin, ladies and gentlemen, with the East and West Pakistan, and today is the day that Pakistan was divided into two, into East and West Pakistan. The machinations by the Indians that led to the Mukti Bhanis, and that led to a whole conspiracy against the then East Pakistan, the then now which is Bangladesh. Today is that day. I would like to quote Quaid-e-Azam, who had said in March 1948 that East Pakistan is the most important component of Pakistan, inhabited by it is the largest single block of Muslims in the world. Today we remember that day. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story concerns the same day in 2014, where terrorists stormed an army public school in Peshawar, killed over 140 people, including 132 children. This is what led to the National Action Plan, and this is what led to the arrest of so many of those who were behind this. We need to remember today as a day that so many children lost their lives. We need to remember today also as a day where we need to make the resolve stronger, that we need to work together as one against all such elements. Then, ladies and gentlemen, our third story is about the Heroes of Christchurch. You very well remember what happened in 2019, in March of 2019, where gunmen murdered around 51 worshippers in two mosques in Christchurch. One of the people who stood up to them was an Afghan national, and this Afghan national, Abdul Aziz, has been recognized by the government of New Zealand with one of their highest ever medals, that is the New Zealand Cross. This is our third story. Our fourth story is about COVID vaccinations for children in Europe, which has stepped up vaccinations for children aged 5 to 11 against COVID-19. And at the same time, it has also warned people that immunization alone is not going to stop the rapid rise of the Omicron variant of the virus. Now, Pfizer is the vaccine that is will be given mostly to the children aged between 5 and 11. Then we'll be talking about Starlink. Starlink is a US-based global satellite broadband provider that has shown interest in connecting Pakistan to its broadband services. They have met with Pakistani authorities, and they have also registered themselves in Pakistan. Let's see how that bodes for the IT industry and for internet in Pakistan. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Saudi Automobile and Motorcycle Federation that has said that Mashal Al-Obaidan and Dania Akil will become the first female drivers from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to participate in the Dakar rally next month. Now, this is a first, and this is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first story, and of course we'll talk about the fall of Dhaka today, the 16th of December 1971. More in the following report.
The fall of Dhaka not only denotes the traumatic breakup of Pakistan, but also vividly depicts Indian terrorist undertones. In order to expose the shocking, cruel face of self-styled democracy India, it's crucial to clear the myths and unravel the untold story of separation of East Pakistan. India laid the foundation of militancy in the region by arming terrorist proxy group Mukti Bahini against state of Pakistan and defenseless civilians for narrow strategic ends. Pro-Indian elements began to murder Bihari and West Pakistani workers and massacring Bengalis who still supported a united Pakistan. The selfless sacrifices of Pakistan Army led to maintenance of order in East Pakistan, and considering its conspiracy foiled, Indian forces intervened in East Pakistan in December 1971, rendering it the rogue mastermind behind the dismemberment of Pakistan. Indian rationale of intervention in Pakistan was a clear violation of international law. Exposing Indian revisionism once again, Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh inadvertently accepted proxy warfare against Pakistan. The scars of Fall of Dhaka haven't healed yet, so both nations have to undergo serious introspection about their shared history, that's their sacrifices, their heroism, and a sense of shared destiny which led to the creation of Pakistan in 1947. The silver lining is that after remaining in deep freeze for over a decade, Pak-Bangladesh ties are warming up as Prime Minister of Bangladesh Sheikh Hasina recently reiterated her government's desire for stronger trade ties and economic collaboration with Pakistan. Pakistan. The idea of a united Pakistan has faded into oblivion, but crucial lessons must never be forgotten, as those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. As a watershed moment in the history of regional and global politics, bloody December 1971 taught us that political opportunism opens doors for violent political struggles, paving way for rogue regimes to intervene. Unity in diversity is always better than division, and building a great country and a strong nation requires greatness, foresight and sacrifices.
Now, to talk about this and go back in history to 1971, we've been joined by a 1971 war veteran. His name is Lieutenant General Retired Raja Tariq Pervaiz. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us in the studios.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Sir, the pleasure is all ours. Sir, 1971, although it leaves a scar as far as Pakistan's division into two, East and West Pakistan, now called Bangladesh, is concerned, but there was a whole conspiracy behind all of this. You being a war veteran of 1971, you were also a prisoner of war taken during that 1971 war. Would you like to highlight some of the aspects of that war, of what led to that war, and what were the Indian machinations behind it?
Certainly. I think the first and the foremost point to remember is that Indians have never reconciled with the idea of a two-nation theory and having Pakistan and East Pakistan either of its borders. So they were all the time conniving to undo Pakistan, and they have been doing it, and people are politicians from East Pakistan, erstwhile East Pakistan, and from West Pakistan played into their hands. And slowly and steadily they started spreading rumors in the Bengalis that they are being treated as second-class citizens. They are not getting the same kind of rights that we in West Pakistan get. And I also noticed that sometimes, not every time, but sometimes we considered the Bengalis not equal to us. We thought that they are slightly inferior and so on, which was wrong. And that, I'm sure that they nursed that grudge that they are not being treated equally. And we thought that it was all kind of a state, and we tried to force whatever political will that we had at that time on the Bengalis. And although they had a majority in population, they were never given the importance that a majority in a nation deserves to get.
And India took full advantage of that.
And they took full advantage of it, and they knew it. And then we always thought that the defense of it was 1,100 miles between the two sides and so on. And to maintain a kind of presence of the army and to maintain it during any extended operation was an impossible task. And therefore, and everybody knew it. We in the Pakistan Army knew it, that it's a very difficult task to defend East Pakistan. And so therefore we thought that the defense of East Pakistan lies in West Pakistan. So when something happens over there, from West Pakistan we'll do things which will force them to stop. So that was one fallacy that was considered at that time, that defense of East lies in the West and so on. Then the Indians and their intelligence agencies, RAW and the rest, they're all the time cultivating the Bengalis and trying to exploit their poverty, and they were brought inside onto the Indian side. They were trained, the educated Bengalis were trained in their own to do the insurgency in East Pakistan. So long as the Indians stayed away from East Pakistan, the Mukti Banis, once having been trained by the Indians, they were sent in. They were not able to do anything at all. We were able to control them. We were able to maintain law and order, peace and quiet, and so on and so forth. And then suddenly, the Indians decided to inject their own service personnel in as Mukti Banis alongside the Mukti Banis. Now all this transformation took place over a period of time. It's not that in a
overnight.
Overnight. It took place over a period of time, and but they had been training them, they had been supporting them, and they have been, giving them monetary benefits, and you name it, and they gave them all kinds of things. And once these people, they came in along with the Indian service personnel, then they were able to,
I would like to quote Major General Retired Zaid Khan, who is a former director of the DGFI of Bangladesh, who said, regular Indian soldiers disguised as the Mukti Bahani have been fighting the Pakistan Army in East Pakistan from April till December 1971, when after losing 5,000 men in covert operations, Indira Gandhi opened war.
So that's what I was saying, that they were not able to do anything at all by themselves. It was the Indian Army personnel who came in the guise of Mukti Bahanis, and then you should just imagine that you are there, in a unit, or you're roaming about somewhere. Everybody is clothed in civil clothes, and you can't differentiate between friend and foe.
Of course.
And suddenly, and you are going, your unit is going, you are marching, there's a route march, or you're going for operations, and you have to, of necessity, go on roads and tracks, and and suddenly all around you have enemies, and it is the most difficult operation to operate against the Mukti Bahanis, because you do not know when and where you are going to be fired upon, when you are going to step on a minefield. It really is extremely hard. But our soldiers, our army, they did a wonderful job. In spite of all these difficulties, they continue to operate and keep them at bay. And so once these people came along, then they knew how to go about laying ambushes and so on and so forth, and then they started doing that.
All right. Now 16th, that is today, is the day, of course, that the Indians took over and Dhaka was lost to us. Nevertheless, there is a very important incident that happened on the 17th of December as well, and you were part of that, and I'd like really our viewers to know that as well, because we won at one front, didn't we, on the 17th of December?
Yes, not only on the 17th, but earlier on, about 10 days before, 10 or 12 days before this, you will not believe it. We were in Kaliganj. It is a place between Junaida and Jasor. In the evening, we were asked to get ready to launch an attack on the Indian forces which had, entered Pakistan. And I was a company commander, myself and one more company commander under our 2IC. We were told to get ready to move, and by about last light, we were all ready, with our weapons and whatever we had. And we moved on to the area of Gharibpur, which is between, as I told you, Jasor, towards Jasor. And once we reached there in the brigade headquarters, we were ordered that you have to launch an attack at first light the next day. And we were surprised. I mean, before going into an attack, a physical attack, a live attack, where actual bullets are going to be fired and received, one gets an opportunity to carry out recce and get ready, and So they said there's no time to, the enemy has encroached and they're already there. It was a Sikh regiment which had, So we went there, and we were told that we did not even carry out any recce. We went along the road, and they said, you form up next to the road and start walking in that direction. And we were told that we will be spotted by armor and artillery and R&S and so on. So we moved into that area, all with the help of maps. The civilians had left the area entirely. So we went there, formed up. There was, we could hear rumbling of, move of armor and, artillery and so on. But the area that we formed up was absolutely quiet. At first light, we formed up, and we started moving in the direction of the enemy. They were completely taken by surprise. When we arrived on them, they left everything over there. We fired at them. They left everything and ran from there. I've yet to see a rout of that kind taking place. Before our eyes, we saw them running away from where they had, because they could never imagine that Pakistan Army was in a position to attack.
All right. What happened on the 17th?
On the 17th, okay, I mean, after this, we drew back to Jessore, because the area behind us had been taken over by other units, and we withdrew towards Khulna. We had taken positions at the outskirts of Khulna. On one side was a river, and on its banks we had taken the positions. And since outskirts there were buildings and there were mills and factories and so on, so we made full use of all those places. And fighting in the built-up area is the most difficult task for any army. So we were in the built-up area, and they were not in the open. So on the 16th, the orders were given, but we did not either receive them, or if we had received them, our CO did not pass it on to us. So we were in full readiness to carry on fighting. And once we were there, we thought, no, it's a built-up area, and we were not sure. I mean, we were certain that the enemy is not likely to attack. We had heard on the radio that the arms are being laid down on the 16th, and much to our dislike. But we did not. And on the morning of the 17th of December, Indians formed up and started moving towards where I was located with my company. And so I was informed by the platoon commander that the enemy is approaching and they want to attack. They are about to attack. So I rushed back. I rushed on the top of the building over there and saw them formed up and moving towards our positions. So we opened fire on them, incurred a few casualties, and they went to the ground.
All right.
And went behind cover, whichever they could get. And after some time, we kept on firing at them, and the white flag was raised by the Indians in Khulna on the 17th of December.
All right. That was one incident that I really wanted our audience to know, and also to comprehend that after so many years, this needs to be made clear as well. Another thing that I want really to make clear, this is my last question to you, sir, because I've taken a lot of your time. A lot of allegations on the Pakistan Armed Forces to have killed more than 3 million innocent Bengalis, raped 200,000 Bengali women. How much of a conspiracy is behind this statement? Because this more or less seems a really botched up statement. What is your take on that?
It is an impossible kind of situation, or most outrageous to even think about it. Please believe me that when you are in the thick of a battle, or when you are fighting insurgency, as I said earlier, you can be fired upon from any direction, you can step on a minefield. You are all the time concentrating on your environments, on your areas, and you are all the same time wanting to get to the enemy before he gets to you. Under those circumstances, and even when we went back to the camp, it never occurred that a thing like this could ever happen, or we could do a thing like this. Under my command, we never opened fire on the civilians. No, never ever an incident of rape or arson or loot took place. In the initial stages, it was the Bengalis which did all these things to their own colleagues, from their own brother officers. Their jisko they used to say bhan and bhabhi, and unko they molested them and killed them, bachon ko bhi, and killed the officers also.
And Pakistan was blamed?
No, Pakistan was not blamed for this. They since the Mukti Banis and the Indians had infiltrated deeply into it, and now they wanted to show that we are the power, we have taken over, and so they showed their strength by most cowardly acts of attack on their own brother officers and their families, and so on.
And then, of course, blaming the Pakistan Armed Forces.
And then, once the army moved in and tried to clear it, there may have been a few odd incidents of revenge, reaction, tooth for tooth.
But not something like that.
No, never, no. It's next to impossible.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Retired Raja Tariq Pervaiz Sahab, to have joined us, to have talked to us about your memories from 1971, to have cleared some of the fallacies that have been propagated by India as well, and to have come all the way to our studios to talk to us about it. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. Sir, please kindly keep seated. I'd like to just end with this statement by former Indian Prime Minister Morarji Desai, who, confessing in 1984, said that I would give 100% credit to India for the liberation of Bangladesh. And of course, there are so many other quotes over the years that India has admitted to being a huge part and in fact being behind this conspiracy. Let's go to our second topic of the day, which is as virulent as this first and as poignant, and that is the APS tragedy that happened on this very day in 2014. More in the following report.
It was supposed to be just another day for the students of Army Public School, Peshawar. They looked forward to attending classes, taking exams, playing with their classmates, and return to their waiting parents just like they had done every day for years. But December 16, 2014 was unlike any other day for the students of Army Public School, Peshawar. As students were studying in their classrooms, taking exams in the hall, terrorists laced with weapons barged into school building. What unfolded after that not only shocked the country, it shook the entire world. TTP terrorists massacred 147 people. 132 among them were children. The terrorists did not intend to take any hostages, but instead wanted to kill as many students as they could. As the terrorists opened fire in the main hall, many of the students ran towards the two exits on the other side of the auditorium. They were gunned down in the garden. Those who survived were scarred for life. They witnessed their best friends, their classmates, and their teachers massacred in front of them. Pakistan Army commandos cleared the school, killed the terrorists, and saved the remaining students and school staff. It was the defining moment for the nation. It turned the resolve to fight terrorism into an unwavering determination to rid Pakistan of terror once and for all. The memory of APS Peshawar massacre is etched in the minds of Pakistani nation. Never will we allow the terrorists to take our children away from us, and never will Pakistan allow our enemies to hurt us. This is Ali Andaz reporting for PTV World.
And to talk more about that, we've been joined by Dr. Khurram Iqbal, who is a strategic analyst. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, this day is very painful because it reminds us of all those children who lost their lives. Have we understood the importance of what happened and the resolve to move together as one to combat all such threats?
Certainly, yes. APS tragedy came as a watershed moment in Pakistan's counter-terrorism campaign that started in 2001. Initially, the nation was divided, the nation was confused on the issue of terrorism, mainly because the terrorist organization, they manipulated, they corrupted the teachings of Islam for their nefarious political agenda. But after the APS tragedy, the entire nation was on the same page with the state organs of Pakistan that this is high time we should go decisive against the terrorist organization. And we have seen how this national consensus has helped Pakistan to get rid of these terrorist organizations in a record time. There was a time in 2007 and 8 that Pakistan was termed as the most dangerous nation on the earth, mainly because of the campaign of blood carried forward by these terrorist organizations. But only within a span of few years, Pakistan Army, Pakistan's law enforcement agencies, they were able to launch countrywide decisive operations against terrorists, not only in the tribal region, but also in the mainland Pakistan where terrorists were hiding. We have seen how Pakistan Armed Forces, they chased terrorists in different parts of the country. And today, we have been able to manage the threat of terrorism in an impressive manner. Theoretically, we cannot eliminate terrorism, we can only bring it to a manageable level. And the way we have managed this threat, I think this is exemplary, and the world stands to gain from Pakistan's experiences. That's why our instructors, they are visiting different military academies across the world to share this experience. So I think it was a difficult battle, But the incident of APS, the tragedy of APS, ironically helped the state to garner public support that was much needed for the state's counterterrorism campaign.
Dr. Saab, how much has the National Action Plan also helped Pakistan achieve these goals of curtailing all forms of terrorism?
Well, initially our kinetic efforts against terrorism, they relied mainly on the military component. But the civilian component of the state, or the civilian organs of the state, they failed or they struggled to complement the military efforts. After the National Action Plan, we have seen that the non-kinetic domain, different organs of state, they teamed up with the military for a comprehensive and decisive response against terrorism. For instance, once the terrorist sanctuaries were cleared from the tribal region, the terrorists slipped into the cities of Pakistan. And of course, in the cities, you cannot launch military operations. There, you have to rely mainly on the civilian law enforcement agencies. And our police, our LEAs, they did an impressive job in terms of intelligence-based operations, in terms of effective raids against terrorists. And in the same vein, I would say that hate speech is something that created an environment conducive for extremist and terrorist organizations. So according to National Action Plan, one of the 20 points of National Action Plan expressed the state resolve to move against hate speech. So that space was also squeezed for the extremist and terrorist elements. So I think this was a whole of a nation approach. We have emerged triumphant against a formidable enemy at a time when different countries across the world, they are struggling to combat terrorism. Pakistan is perhaps the only country that has emerged triumphant against terrorism.
Dr. Saab, how much has our general public also understood from this tragic incident, and how much have our administrations and our organizations that are in power also understood from this grim reality of 2014? Are we strong enough, Dr. Saab, to be very frank, to combat any such incident from happening in the future?
Well, Mr. Bhatt, we have to understand that this popular perception or public opinion was quite supportive of the extremist ideologies after 2001. It was mainly because of the extremist or jihadi culture that was cultivated in Pakistan in 1980s. So majority, if not majority of Pakistan, a significant proportion of Pakistani population was supportive of this idea championed by organizations like TTP and Al-Qaeda. I recall in 2007 and 8, an international poll was conducted, and 35 to 40% Pakistanis, they subscribed to the same worldview as that of TTP and Al-Qaeda. This adverse public opinion hindered government responses to terrorism. This adverse public opinion was one of the main hindrances in government's counterterrorism efforts. But after the APS tragedy, I think the Pakistani population realized that groups such as Tariq-e-Taliban Pakistan, Al-Qaeda, they are up to no good. They are not the custodians of Islamic teaching. They have no love lost for Muslims or Islam. Rather, their actions, their ideology, they stand in complete contrast to the beautiful preachings of our religion. So that was a critical moment when Pakistani population put its support behind Pakistan army, behind Pakistan's state, and that proved decisive. Whether we are prepared to deal with terrorism at the moment, yes. We have to admit that our capacity to counter terrorism has increased manifold. This was the kind of enemy that we had never faced before 2001. But after 2001, Pakistani institutions, they are engaged in a continuous, sustained battle against this hybrid enemy. So, and they have learned a great deal to basically deal with any threat. That is the reason that number of terrorist attacks in Pakistan have gone down, declined significantly. There was a time in 2007 and 8 that Pakistan was ranked second worst affected country by terrorism after Iraq. But now the number of terrorist incidents in Pakistan has declined to 3 or 4 low intensity terrorist attacks in the peripheries of Pakistan. So that speaks volumes about the capacity that Pakistani institutions have developed. But let's be clear about one thing, that this should not lead us to counterterrorism triumphalism. Why? Because the extremist tendencies, they still exist within Pakistani society. That toxic ideology still has some sort of presence in Pakistani society. And unless we are able to eliminate this toxic ideology that pitches one Muslim against the other, we should continue these efforts. And I think now it is high time that we move our focus from kinetic counterterrorism to non-kinetic counterterrorism, which involves giving a counter-narrative to extremist ideology, which involves engaging the communities, which involves rebuilding the areas where the military conducted operations against TTP. So I think this is high time that we focus on the non-kinetic part of counterterrorism.
All right.
Now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khurram Iqbal, strategic analyst, to have talked about this very painful day that reminds us of what happened in 2014 this day. But our country stood as one, and the resolve that was made by the people, by the government, by our armed forces has together ended in thwarting much of that terrorist element that led to the killing of the 132 children in Peshawar on this very dreadful day. This day will always be a reminder for all of us to never forget. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Let's go to our next stories very quickly. First is from New Zealand, Christchurch. We remember what happened in March of 2019, where a gunman opened fire on 2 mosques in Christchurch, whereas a lot of all those people were killed and brutally killed by that gunman. There were people who stood up against that gunman. One of those, who is an Afghan national, has now been awarded the biggest prize in New Zealand, and that is a New Zealand Cross. That is the country's highest bravery award, because of the fact that he stood up to that gunman on that very day in New Zealand. Even countries like New Zealand have given the highest award to this person who stood up against such elements who tried to get rid of Muslims in those 2 mosques in the March of 2019. So, of course, this is also another day of remembrance for all of those in different countries across the world about religious extremism. Let's go to our next story, and that is about COVID vaccines and how in Europe it has now been decided to vaccinate the children between 5 and 11 years against COVID-19. In Europe specifically, the vaccine that is going to be used is going to be the Pfizer BioNTech shot for these 5 to 11-year-olds. And of course, this is an age that is now experiencing a high level of COVID-19 infections that was not seen before. We have the Delta variant, the Delta Plus, and now the Omicron variant that is spreading quite quickly. And that is one of the reasons why the European Union has decided to start to inoculate and vaccinate their 5 to 11 years olds. I hope this leads to more prevention from this pandemic for this age group. And then we will go to Starlink, ladies and gentlemen. That is a US-based global satellite broadband provider. Now, Starlink has shown interest in connecting Pakistan to its broadband services. There was a meeting that was held between Starlink Middle East and the telecom minister and the IT secretary, Dr. Sohail Rajput, as well. And they discussed the facilitation that was available for the private sector as far as investment in the country is concerned. A plan to launch Starlink satellite broadband internet across Pakistan has also come under discussion during this meeting. It is Starlink Pakistan has been registered in the country, is expected to open its office in Pakistan very soon. It's also part of the SpaceX company. So, of course, we might be seeing a lot of high bandwidth in the days to come. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as our final story of the day. And that concerns Mashal Al Obedan and Dania Akil. Now, these 2 women as a first from the kingdom, will become the first female drivers from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to participate in the Dakar rally that is going to happen next month. The 44th edition of the endurance rally in Saudi Arabia is more than 8,300 kilometers long. It is a track that passes through deserts and mountains, and the duo will drive a distance of up to 600 meters per day. Women, as you very well know, were not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia until the ban was lifted in 2018, and now we are seeing women drivers participating in desert rallies. So all the best to them, and let's see what happens in this rally, whether they win the prize or not. Nevertheless, the fact that they are competing is more than enough. We'll end it with this today, and the resolve that we should never forget this day as far as the APS strategy is concerned, and also the day of East Pakistan and West Pakistan's division, also a remembrance for us to move forward in a constructive manner as one nation, as one Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.